Cafe owner kicks out a war veteran, unaware of who is watching the scene. But first, remember to subscribe to our channel so we can keep sharing incredible stories. Haven's Corner was the kind of cafe that radiated warmth and comfort, nestled in the heart of a quiet American town. Known for its artisan coffee and cozy atmosphere, it was a hub for locals seeking a break from their routine. The cafe, however, was also home to its opinionated owner, Tom Bennett, a man in his late 40s with a firm belief in maintaining a particular ambiance for his clientele. One chilly Tuesday morning, the bell above the cafe door jingled, and in walked Jack Miller, a weathered figure in his early 60s. His worn-out army jacket and slightly stooped posture spoke volumes about his past. Jack had served 2 tours overseas and had been struggling to adjust to civilian life since returning to a world that had moved on without him. Despite his quiet demeanor, Jack carried an air of quiet resilience. Tom glanced up from behind the counter, his eyes narrowing slightly. The cafe was moderately busy, filled with regulars sipping their morning brews. Jack approached the counter and asked for a simple black coffee. As he reached for his wallet, Tom hesitated before leaning in. "Look," Tom began, lowering his voice but keeping a firm tone, "this isn't the kind of place for, well, people like you. You should try somewhere else." Jack froze, his hand still hovering over his wallet. "I just wanted a coffee," he said quietly, his voice tinged with confusion and hurt. "I run a business here," Tom replied, his tone dismissive. "I need to think about my customers' comfort." The cafe grew uncomfortably silent as a few patrons exchanged uneasy glances. Jack's face flushed, but he chose not to argue. He slipped his wallet back into his pocket, murmured a soft, "Sorry," and exited the cafe. In a secluded corner near the window, Clare Morgan sat quietly with her latte. Her sharp, observant eyes had taken in the entire scene. Clare was a journalist known for exposing injustice, and her mind was already racing. She didn't know who Jack was or why he had been treated so harshly, but she was determined to find out. As the door closed behind Jack, the cafe's buzz resumed, but Clare remained still. She sipped her coffee thoughtfully, her instincts telling her that this story was just beginning. The morning's unsettling incident left an impression on several cafe patrons. The air inside Haven's Corner was thick with whispered discussions about what had transpired. Tom Bennett, however, moved about the cafe with his usual brisk demeanor, pretending nothing had happened. He occasionally glanced toward the door, perhaps expecting Jack to return or for someone to confront him, but no one did. Outside the cafe, Jack Miller shuffled down the street, his hands stuffed into the pockets of his faded jacket. His head was bowed low, shielding his face from the brisk wind and perhaps the shame of what had just happened. He hadn't been looking for trouble, just a moment of peace in a place he thought would offer it. Back inside, Clare Morgan remained seated by the window. Her notebook, usually reserved for journalistic notes, now contained a few hastily scrawled observations. As a seasoned investigative journalist, she had a sharp eye for spotting injustice, and today her instincts were ringing alarms. Who was this man? Why had he been treated this way? And most importantly, what kind of establishment was Tom running that justified such blatant rudeness? Clare's thoughts churned. She decided she needed more than just observations. She needed facts. Clare watched as Tom returned behind the counter, speaking with a smile to another customer as though nothing unusual had occurred. It was a stark contrast to the cold dismissal Jack had received. Her decision was made. Rising from her seat, Clare left the cafe, blending seamlessly into the crowd outside. Her first stop was the public library, where access to local archives often provided surprising insights. Using her journalist resources, Clare began digging into Haven's Corner's history and the life of its owner, Tom Bennett. Tom had a reputation for being a perfectionist and maintaining an image for his cafe, but Clare found no records of similar incidents or complaints. It was Jack's story that took more time to uncover. Through brief conversations with locals and some background research, Claire pieced together fragments of his life. Jack was a veteran who had served honorably, but had struggled upon returning home. His wife had passed away years ago, and he lived alone, surviving on a modest pension. The more Claire learned, the angrier she became. Here was a man who had sacrificed so much, only to be mistreated in a town that should have embraced him. This wasn't just an isolated incident of rudeness, it was a failure of the community. By the time Claire returned home that evening, her mind was set. She began drafting an article detailing what she had witnessed at the cafe, though she stopped short of publishing it. For now, she wanted more clarity and perhaps a chance to speak directly to both Tom and Jack. As the day ended, Haven's Corner continued its usual routine, oblivious to the storm brewing quietly in Claire's hands. The aftermath of the incident began rippling through the small town like a quiet storm. At first, it was whispers among the cafe's regulars, a mixture of shock and unease about what had happened to Jack Miller. Some defended Tom, claiming he had a right to manage his business as he saw fit. Others, however, were deeply unsettled, questioning if their patronage supported values they could no longer condone. Claire Morgan, meanwhile, had not been idle. Over the next few days, she delved deeper into Jack's story, uncovering details that painted a vivid picture of his sacrifices and struggles. Jack had served 2 tours in Iraq, where he earned a Bronze Star for his bravery, but the war had left its marks: sleepless nights, a lingering injury, and a world that no longer felt like home. Claire's research unearthed something else. Jack had been instrumental in founding a local veterans support group. Despite his challenges, he dedicated time to helping other veterans navigate their post-service lives. Yet here he was, humiliated and shunned in his own community. Determined to bring Jack's story to light, Claire scheduled an interview with him. When she arrived at Jack's modest apartment, he was hesitant. His pride and distrust of media made him wary, but Claire's sincerity eventually won him over. Sitting at a small kitchen table, Jack shared his story. "I wasn't looking for charity," he said, his hands gripping a steaming cup of coffee Claire had brought along. "I just wanted a moment to sit somewhere warm, maybe feel like I belonged, even for a little while." His words struck a chord with Claire. She jotted down notes while struggling to maintain her composure. The community needed to hear this story, but she also feared what might come of it. Small towns were unforgiving places, and airing this issue publicly could stir tensions. Meanwhile, the cafe was beginning to feel the strain of the incident. A few regulars stopped showing up, and social media posts hinted at growing dissatisfaction with Tom Bennett's actions. One particular post, a photo of Jack walking away from the cafe with the caption, "Heroes deserve better," went viral locally. Tom initially brushed off the backlash, dismissing it as overblown drama. But as the days went on, the empty seats and murmurs of discontent began to weigh on him. Still, his pride kept him from addressing the issue directly. Claire faced her own challenges. While she felt compelled to share Jack's story, she also worried about the potential fallout for him. Publishing the article might bring him support, but it could also subject him to more scrutiny and pity, something Jack explicitly didn't want. One evening, as she reviewed her notes, Claire received an email that changed everything. A national veterans advocacy group had caught wind of her investigation. They offered to support her efforts to bring Jack's story to light and amplify it on a larger platform. The decision now lay entirely in her hands. Take the story national and risk escalating the controversy, or keep it local and hope for quieter but slower justice. Claire stared at her laptop screen, weighing the consequences. The power of a single story, she realized, could either unite or divide a community. But the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, needed to be told. The turning point came sooner than anyone expected. Claire's article, thoughtfully written and filled with heartfelt details of Jack's story, was published both in the local newspaper and online. It quickly gained traction, drawing attention far beyond their small town. Readers across the state shared the piece, expressing outrage at how a war veteran had been treated so callously. The National Veterans Advocacy Group amplified the story, ensuring it reached an even wider audience. At Haven's Corner, the fallout was immediate. The cafe, once bustling with loyal customers, now saw its tables sitting empty during peak hours. Tom Bennett, usually confident and composed, found himself grappling with a mixture of anger and regret. The article had painted him as a villain, and while part of him wanted to defend his actions, he couldn't ignore the growing resentment from the community. One afternoon, as Tom stared at the rows of untouched pastries behind the counter, he received a visitor he didn't expect, Jack Miller. Jack stood in the doorway, his frame still carrying the weight of everything he had endured. There was no hostility in his eyes, only quiet resolve. "Can we talk?" Jack asked, his voice steady. Tom hesitated before nodding, motioning for Jack to take a seat. The cafe was nearly empty, giving the two men privacy. "I didn't come here to argue," Jack began, his tone calm but firm. "I read the article. I know things have been hard for you since it came out." Tom bristled slightly, but Jack continued. "But I also know what it feels like to carry regrets. The truth is, I don't want to see this cafe fail. Haven's Corner isn't just a business, it's part of this town. But things need to change." For the first time, Tom really looked at Jack, seeing not just a customer he had dismissed, but a man who had faced battles far greater than any he could imagine. The shame he had suppressed since that day resurfaced, making his voice falter. I was wrong," Tom admitted, the words heavier than he expected. "I was so caught up in maintaining some image that I forgot what really matters. I can't undo what I said to you, but I'd like a chance to make things right." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "You can start by making Haven's Corner a place that welcomes everyone, veterans, families, anyone who needs a seat and a cup of coffee." Their conversation marked the beginning of a transformation, not just for the cafe, but for Tom himself. Over the next few weeks, Haven's Corner reopened its doors with a renewed purpose. Tom reached out to local organizations, offering the cafe as a meeting space for community groups, including the Veterans Support Network Jack had helped establish. Claire, ever watchful, documented the cafe's transformation. Her second article told a story of redemption and community healing, showcasing how a single act of accountability could ripple into something greater. But Claire's work wasn't done. She arranged for Jack to speak at a town hall event, sharing his journey with the community. The event drew a large crowd, including people who had never given much thought to the struggles of veterans. Jack's speech was raw and powerful, a reminder of the sacrifices made by those who served and the importance of compassion in welcoming them home. At the back of the room, Tom listened quietly, his heart heavy but hopeful. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose beyond running a business. He approached Jack after the event, extending a hand. "Thank you for giving me a chance to change," Tom said sincerely. Jack shook his hand, a faint smile on his lips. "Change isn't about words, Tom. It's about action, and I think you're on the right track." The evening closed with a sense of unity that the town hadn't felt in years. What had started as a single moment of injustice now carried the potential to reshape an entire community. The morning of the cafe's big event dawned clear and bright, signaling a fresh chapter for Haven's Corner. Tom Bennett, once the embodiment of exclusion, had worked tirelessly to transform his cafe into a space of inclusivity. Today, he would host a special gathering to honor local veterans, with Jack Miller as the guest of honor. Bunting in red, white, and blue adorned the cafe's exterior, and a makeshift stage had been set up on the sidewalk. Inside, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries filled the air. For the first time in weeks, Haven's Corner was bustling, not just with customers, but with a spirit of camaraderie and community. Jack arrived early, dressed in a crisp suit that contrasted sharply with the weathered army jacket he wore the first time he entered the cafe. He stood near the stage, speaking with a few fellow veterans who had come to show their support. His presence was calm yet commanding, a testament to his resilience and quiet strength. Clare Morgan stood nearby, her notebook tucked under her arm. Her article had been the spark that set all of this in motion, but today she was just an observer, letting the story unfold naturally. She had one last piece to write, but this time it would focus on hope and reconciliation. As the event began, Tom stepped onto the stage, gripping the microphone tightly. He cleared his throat, his nerves evident. "Thank you all for coming today," he began, his voice unsteady but genuine. "I've made a lot of mistakes that hurt people and damage the trust of this community, but I want to start making things right. Today is about acknowledging those who have given so much for us and ensuring they know they're valued." The crowd applauded politely, and Tom motioned for Jack to join him on stage. Jack stepped forward, his gait steady, and took the microphone. He paused for a moment, scanning the faces of the crowd. "This isn't just about me," he began, his deep voice resonating. "It's about every veteran who's faced struggles after serving their country, every person who's felt unwelcome or overlooked. Today, we're reminded that compassion and understanding can change lives. I'm grateful for the chance to stand here, not as a victim, but as a voice for those who need one. Adine." The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing down the street. Tom, standing beside Jack, seemed visibly moved. But the real surprise came as the event wound down. Claire, who had remained mostly in the background, approached Jack and Tom with a gleam in her eye. "I wanted to let you both know," she began, her tone confident, "that your story has inspired a larger initiative. A non-profit organization has pledged funding to support local businesses that commit to inclusivity and community service. Haven's Corner is the first recipient of their grant." Tom's eyes widened, his shock quickly giving way to gratitude. "You mean we can expand? Do more?" Claire nodded. "Exactly. They want to help turn Haven's Corner into a model for other businesses to follow. And Jack, they're also offering support to expand your veterans network. This is just the beginning." The news sent a ripple of excitement through the gathering. Jack and Tom exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. What had started as a moment of conflict had evolved into a movement for change. As the crowd began to disperse, Jack turned to Tom. "Looks like we've got some work to do." Tom grinned, the weight of his past mistakes finally lifting. "Yeah, and this time we'll do it right." Claire watched as the two men shook hands, her heart swelling with pride. She had always believed in the power of a story to make a difference, and today had proved her right. Under the golden afternoon sun, Haven's Corner stood as a testament to redemption, resilience, and the simple truth that change was always possible, with the right mix of courage and compassion.